most of the Wall Street people you're talking to are money babysitters, and they're not investing your money. They're just the middle person. They're the middleman. And they're getting a fee to do that, but they're getting a fee to be likable. You use the person because they say some things maybe you don't understand, and they sound like they know what they're doing. But why wouldn't we want to control our own money? Because we've been brainwashed into being financial slaves because we're told we can't handle it. The banks are safe. Wall Street is safe. Hell, put it in a government program and let them put all kinds of rules and penalties and fees on it. And we go, okay. And that's how we end up being financial slaves.
And I love that. And Jim, like when you said that about babysitters, I got a 3-year-old, and I'm sure a lot of you listening to this, you have children, and you've probably had babysitters. So you've had good babysitters maybe, and you've had bad ones, and I don't know how many of you as parents, when you're leaving your children with the babysitter, I think in the back of your head, I wonder if the second we leave, he or she is going to sit on the couch and just play on her phone the entire time. That would be a bad babysitter, right? Your kid's just off eating the chocolate, getting into everything, destroying things, and the babysitter's not babysitting, just sitting there on the phone, aloof, not doing anything. Think of that mental picture and how that makes you feel thinking about that leaving the house. That's what you're doing 9 out of 10 times when you give your money to the advisor, to Wall Street. That's what they're doing. As soon as they get your money, they say they're going to do all these things. They're just sitting there and letting your money, do whatever it's going to do, good, bad, or indifferent. It was a kind of cool parable. I liked bringing that one full circle.
I like that because here's the thing. Think about it this way. Is you would never expect your babysitter to parent your children. That's not what you expect, right? So why would you let your money babysitter grow your wealth or control your money? You shouldn't. And just like you didn't know how to be a parent when you started off being a parent, you learned, you studied, you tried and failed and tried something else. It's the same way with your money. You can learn how, but guess what you do? Is you find somebody that's already gone through these mistakes and has been a parent, has grown their wealth, and you ask them to help you and guide you and coach you. Doesn't that make so much more sense than giving up control of your money to somebody who works for Wall Street, who's their only job is to collect assets under management, and when there's a correction in the market, convince you that you're doing better than everybody else?
Jim, there's one thing that this audience doesn't know. I mean, they might know it about me, that I was a financial advisor. The people that we're literally talking about, I was that for 16 years, but you also were. You have a long history of Wall Street-ish activities. Do you want to just hit on those a little bit? So the audience doesn't discredit anything we're saying and be like, you don't even know, you guys weren't advisors. Wait, actually, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, Chris, that's a great point. And it's, what, I grew up very poor and I didn't understand money. And I grew up in Los Angeles, and I tried to figure out like why people, and in my mind, okay, for everybody from not Beverly Hills, Palos Verdes, I'm sure that it's not a perfect place, but in my mind, it was perfect, right? Big houses, everything else. And I didn't understand how people got from where I was to there, right? And like, hey, why are we poor? Why don't we have, why are we standing in line for government cheese? And these people, they look like they have an amazing life. It came down to money. They had money. We didn't have money. They had worth. We didn't have worth, right? That's the way people look at it when you're poor. And so I became fascinated with money. So when I went to school, I wanted to study how to run a business, how to finance. And I got out of school, and I was surprised, every financial firm in Denver would hire me because it's 100% commission. They're not risking anything. So, but I built over 15 years, I built my assets under management as a fee-based financial planner to 700 million under management. And I was charging 1%, Chris. That's what I was charging. Right now, I had a big staff and expensive office space and everything else. So I wasn't just making that much money, but 700 million under management. And I got this platform, and I know something similar probably happened to you, Chris, is I got this report from Brinker Capital, and it said that our clients had got 9.38% over this period of time. I was like, 9.38% doesn't seem like my account grew that much. So I went back and I took out fees and expenses and taxes, and it was right at 4%. And I went, oh my gosh, because you know how you do this, right? Like you and I sit down, Chris, and you guess and I guess, and then you hope, and then I hope, and we're hoping together that all these things line up and the stars align. But the stars don't align at 4% when you're looking at thinking it's 9. Nobody wins except for me, because I get my 1% no matter what. But I went, wait a minute. How did my clients become wealthy? I mean, I had some wealthy clients, and I threw away all the ones that got lucky. You know, hey, you were the janitor at Google or something, right? Threw them all away. And it came down to 2 things: businesses and real estate, which if you invest in real estate, you're in the real estate business. Okay. So it came down to that. And I thought, wait a minute, why am I telling everybody to put money on Wall Street when all of these people became wealthy with businesses in real estate?
Holy
and that's
crap.
when about the time I met Nelson Nash. But to your point, I've been there, done that. I've had the fancy binders, 200 pages of total BS, done it all.
It was funny that you mentioned Brinker. We used to use an SMA, a bunch of SMA platforms with Brinker that we had managed our clients' assets. It was just brings me back to a time that I often like to forget about. But you really covered a lot of things, and you hit something that we hadn't yet talked about that really struck a nerve with me. Is me too is the only thing I can say. I was an advisor. I thought I knew everything there was to know about money. I mean, and that's just what most advisors are. And there's no disrespect to that. I mean, that's just how you're taught. You're taught to believe as an advisor, especially when you get to a higher level, that you pretty much know everything. And there's nobody that's going to pull one over on you. And I remember it was 2008 for me. I was almost bankrupt. I was in the middle of developing a strip mall. You know, I had been making a bunch of money, but just like most advisors, I'd make it and I'd spend it as fast as I could make it. Got to keep up with the Joneses, or better yet, Mark in the office next to me. He just bought a new Mercedes. Well, dude, the BMW 328 isn't going to cut it against his new one. I got to go upgrade, and I got to upgrade the suit. It was just a freaking game. And you folks, you've seen it in the movies, but it's really not much different in real life. But I remember when I was losing it all, I had a couple clients, and only a couple that were real estate investors. Because remember, real estate investors, they never really wanted to invest money with an advisor. Right. And the only money they put with me was Roth IRAs. That was it. It's all I had. And I remember, everybody was losing out. I was almost bankrupt. And these guys were making money hand over fist. This is during the Great Recession when everything was falling apart. And these guys are making a bunch of money. And I could not pay attention to what they were doing. And guess what they were doing? Real estate. They were buying more real estate. They were thinking this was Christmas over and over again in 2008, when everybody else was like, the world is falling apart. These real estate investors thought it was Christmas time. The gifts just kept coming, and the gifts were prices on apartment buildings, pennies on the dollar. I couldn't ignore it. And that's when I started getting into real estate. And also that's what led me to the same path that led you got to Nelson Nash. I got to Brent Kessler, but we both arrived at the same thing, the infinite banking concept. So let me just turn it over and have you pick up from like where you found real estate and businesses, but then all of a sudden, somehow, some way you were led to the path of Nelson Nash.
Yeah. It's funny, Chris, is, before I found Nelson, I found his book. And this financial planner friend of mine had an amazing office overlooking the mountains, and he was one of my guys. And I, wined and dined my guys. That was my job, right? And he had the stack of black books in his lobby. And he said, I was looking at it. He said, "Oh, you can have one of those. It doesn't work." And it was Nelson's book, Become Your Own Banker, Unlocking the Infinite Banking Concept. And I said, "Oh, okay, it doesn't work." So I put it on my desk. I thumbed through it and I said, "Oh, this is just a way to sell life insurance." But for some reason, Nelson resonated with me, and I was going to be in Houston. He was speaking in Houston at the end of the week, like on a Friday, Saturday, 10 hours. And so I called the person putting on the seminar and said, "Hey, I won't say a word, but can I sit in?" And they said, "Sure." So I sat in, listened to Nelson, and about halfway through, I was like, this guy's either completely crazy or he's brilliant. And I couldn't decide which one. And then after the seminar, I spoke to him for like an hour asking him questions. And he said, "You're a financial advisor." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "But, I realize there's something wrong there." And he said, "Okay, read this, and this. And then I'm going to do another one of these in 2 weeks. I want you to come back." So I came back, listened to him for another 10 hours. But halfway through that one, I went across the Epiphany Bridge, and I was like, whoa, got it. This is not about selling life insurance. It's like when Apple said, "Hey, you're going to have thousands of songs in your pocket. Oh, and you need the iPod for that. Hey, you're going to have financial freedom. You're going to have time freedom. You're going to have all this freedom, but you need this really big life insurance contract to do it." And guess what? That's why when you work with somebody like Chris or me, you don't have to pay us. The insurance company pays us. So it's cool, right? And so I started calling Nelson, and I was shocked that every time I called him, he answered the phone. I mean, I think every single time for the first 6 months. And we became friends. And in the story that he told me that changed the way that I saw infinite banking, Chris, was the airplane story. He was a pilot. He owned part of an airplane with some friends, and he financed the airplane instead of letting the bank finance the airplane. And I went, wait a minute, that's a cash flowing asset, because these other people are paying you. And so they're paying part of your portion, but also they're leasing it out when you guys aren't using it. That's a cash flowing asset. So it's not the interest that it is the interest that I'm recovering that would have gone to the bank. But what is that airplane doing? It's like the equipment financing example in the book. Everybody wants to say, well, he got all this interest. No, but look at what the landscaping company did. It made money. It was a cash flowing asset. And that's not how people explain infinite banking on YouTube and on these other platforms when they haven't been doing it very long and they don't understand.
Jim, I just did a debate. Now, we're we're coming up on the election, and there's debates all the time, but I did a debate with ChatGPT. And the debate with ChatGPT, because everybody would say ChatGPT is going to get it right. So I debated it, and I wanted to know, does ChatGPT know more about the infinite banking concept than me? And the first thing, I just asked what the infinite banking concept was. And it goes through and it mentions Nelson and it talks about it. But through the whole thing, all it talked about is a whole life insurance policy. And I'm like, you're wrong. Like, it's not about the whole life. The infinite banking concept, take the whole life away. It's the process of taking back the banking functions in your life. Like, the whole life is just a machine that makes it work more efficiently. It's like, we all want a more efficient vehicle. We all want a place or something that's more efficient than what we have now. So that's all the whole life was. And I'm just like, ChatGPT literally thinks that the infinite banking concept is a product, just like so many of the people out there that when they first hear it, oh, that's that whole life thing. Heck, Dave Ramsey. Like, I can't get enough of listening to Dave Ramsey bash IBC or, his debates he does with IBC. He's always thinking IBC, oh, it's a scam. IBC, those whole lives, they're terrible. Wait, Dave, hold on. Are we talking about whole life insurance? Or are we talking about the infinite banking concept? Because they're really two independent things. One is a process, the infinite banking concept, Dave, and the other is the product. Yes, the machine, but we just run money through it because it's more efficient. Oh, and Dave, we run money through that efficient vehicle also because we love our family. And we want to make sure that someday when we're no longer here, our family is better off. And Dave, if you're so smart and genius, then clearly you'd understand the Rockefellers and what they do. Did they use term and invest the difference, Dave? I think not. Did the Rothschilds use term and invest the difference? I think not. They all use the same thing Nelson Nash taught and the same thing we teach, Jim. It's the arrogance behind the man that I can't stand, because I like what he stands for. I like what he teaches, but his arrogance eludes him.
I think he's very hypocritical too, Chris. Is how did he make his money?
Life insurance
in real estate
and in real estate
and his business.